So this evening's discussion is on Bhagavad Gita, chapter 18, text number 60. And Bhagavad Gita, chapter 18, text number 60 comes right after text number 59. So I'm going to take a look at 59 and then the next three verses because they flow very nicely, seamlessly together. Since you've been studying Bhagavad Gita consistently, I would assume, you know where we are. This is just preceding, the superlative verse of Bhagavad Gita, Sarvadharmam Parityaja Mamekam Sharanam Braja. Everyone knows that verse. Surrender to Krishna only and give up all other dharmas. Just surrender to Krishna only. Final instruction, essence of Bhagavad Gita, coming up in just a few verses. So to warm us up, we find Arjuna still stuck in the position of hesitating. And why is he hesitating? Well, you read it last week, due to ahankara. Yad ahankaram ashrita. He's taken shelter of that really unfortunate bad friend, ahankara. Yad ahankaram ashritya. So Prabhupada has softened it in the translation. You'll be falsely directed. You'll be falsely directed if you take shelter of false ego. You'll be falsely directed. And when you're falsely directed, what's the result? By your nature, you'll be engaged in warfare. You're trying to avoid engaging in warfare. Well, guess what, Arjun? You're going to be engaged in warfare. Why? Well, that's what text 60 is saying. Text 60, swabhava. Swabhava means your nature. So let's have a little lesson on what swabhava means. Earlier in this chapter, there's Kshatriya karma swabhava jam, Brahma karma swabhava jam, Vaishya karma swabhava jam, Shudra karma swabhava jam. So what does swabhava mean? What does swabhava mean? Swabhava means your nature. It has everything to do with the modes. Swabhava has everything to do with the modes. And it's going to come up in just a moment. It's the modes of nature, prakriti. Swabhava jena kaunteya. And the word for word Prabhupada is translated as swabhava jena is born of your own nature. Born of your own nature. Look at this. You can see on your screen. I hope you can see the screen. Under illusion, you are now declining to act according to my direction. So there's a free will activity going on all the time, where we're choosing Krishna or non-Krishna. And the non-Krishna is this ahankara. And when you say the ahankara choice, you have a lot goes with it. It's swabhava. Declining to act according to my direction. You'll be compelled to work according to your own nature. And his nature is a kshatriya, so he'll act as a kshatriya. But when one opts not Krishna, you check that box, you get moha. You get illusion, you get the modes of nature doing their thing, and you're forced to act as if helplessly carried by a machine. So guess what? That's coming up the next verse, text 61. Yantra Rudani Mayaya. Look at that, text 61. Let me switch quickly to text 61. Here's a little The yantra arudhani literally means just like you see on the left screen, just like puppets. The way that Prabhupada is translated, and we often explain it, is like a machine made of the material energy. But the actual meaning of the word is like a puppet moved by strings. Strings being manipulated by the puppeteers. Look at those three ladies up there. Those are the three modes of nature who are puppeteering the puppets below. And that's what Swabhava is. Conditioning, or Swabhava, can impel, but there is a good alternative. You know where the good alternative is. The good alternative is you take shelter of Krishna. So that's where this next section is going. Somehow it's not changing the slide. Oh, here we go. Here we go. They're changing the slide. More confidential knowledge, surrender to Supersoul. Now, Arjuna has already understood. Chapter 10, Bhagavad Gita. Arjuna has understood Krishna's position, isn't it? Param bhavam, param dhama, paratram, paravam, bhavan, purusham, shashvatam, etc. Arjuna understands that the person who he's speaking to has his super soul manifestation in the heart of every living entity. So that's part of what chapter 18 is doing. It's restating things that are already understood. It's like a summary with a strong emphasis on knowledge, and with that knowledge, when it hits its target, when consciousness is properly awakened by knowledge, then one can act in devotion to Krishna. And Krishna recognizes Arjuna's capable, and therefore you see in the blue letters, yantra arudhani mayaya. Yantra, we all know, yantra means machine. Well, that's one of the meanings of yantra. Here's another meaning of yantra. It's a nice one. Many of you have either been to Mayapur or have seen photographs of the deity in Mayapur of Lord Nrsingadev. And he's showing his Ugra Nrsinga form, very fierce, except he's smiling. And he's showing his teeth and he's showing his nails, and he's really angry that Prahlad is being harassed like this. And Prahlad is there with folded palms, smiling. And at the bottom, below Prahlad and Lord Nrsingadev's feet, on the left and the right side, there are two brass plates. Look closely at those two brass plates, and you'll see there's a design on the plate. And the design on the plate is a two-dimensional depiction of the abode of Lord Nrsingadev in the spiritual world. It's a Nrsinga yantra. Nrsinga yantra. And there's other deities with other yantras. It's part of the process of worship that Lord Brahma uses, described in Brahma Samhita. So it's a machine, and in this case, it's a machine, we could say, made of the material energy, Prakriti or Maya, but it's carrying the living entity. And who is directing that machine? Ishvara sarvabhutanam hridesher arjuna tishtati. Brahmayan sarvabhutani. The Supreme Lord is situated in everyone's heart, O Arjuna, and is directing the wanderings of all living entities who are seated on a machine made of the material energy. Made of the material energy. Machine made of the material energy. The body is like a machine. There's different depictions of different systems within the body, the circulatory system and the muscular system and the digestive system. And look at those teeth on the right side. That guy's really been good at brushing his teeth nicely. There's a car. Here's Prabhupada's description. And down below is the guy upside down with wheels even underneath his head and moving along, and he's going along for the ride. A person seated in a high-speed motor car goes faster than one seated in a slower car, though the living entities, the drivers, may be the same. Similarly, by the order of the Supreme Soul, material nature fashions a particular type of body to accommodate a particular type of living entity, so that he may work according to, there we go, past desires. That's modes of nature. The living entity is not independent. The individual is always under the Lord's control. Therefore, that's the punchline. One's duty is to surrender to him. So remember, the verse that we're discussing is 60, and this is 61, the yantra rudhani mayaya. That's the default mode when you choose false ego. Then you're forced to act according to swabhava, and the swabhava acts like a machine that just carries you from point A to point B, and you're going along for the ride according to one's swabhava. But there's a good option. Here's the good option. What is it? O sign of Bharata, surrender unto him only. It's him as means him. I mean Krishna. But surrender unto that Lord who's situated within the heart of every living entity. By his grace, you'll attain transcendental peace and the supreme and eternal abode. Well, that sounds pretty nice. But surrendering, that's the tough part. It's the tough part because, well, we don't like suffering, but we like our dear friend false ego. And we're pretty attached to our dear friend false ego. We don't want to let go. And then comes the default mode, the swabhava, and you're forced to act, and then sometimes just being carried on a machine made of the material energy. So this is the alternative. What's that? Surrender unto him utterly. Tam eva sharanam gaccha sarva bhavena bharata tat prasadat param shantim sthanim prapsyasi shashvatam. So different people have different ideas what's peace. Arjuna was thinking peace means I just go to the mountains, live in a cave, and won't have to do all this bad fighting business. Some idea, peace of mind is no anxieties, no troubles. Peace of heart, param shantim, the peace that comes from loving and being loved. That sounds even better. The peace that, this is a biblical saying, the peace that passeth all understanding. That's transcendental peace. Transcendental peace. A nice phrase. Arjuna thought that he could have only shanti, that leave the battlefield, or sthana. But Krishna is saying you get both. You get both. And here's the phrase. Param shantim sthanam prapsyasi shashvatam. It's an eternal position, everlasting. And the other isn't, by default. So naturally, this is, again, leading up to 1866, the final summary of the whole of the Bhagavad Gita, and seeing that Arjuna is, on the one hand, still hesitating after all that he's understood. It's a summary. And on the other hand, he sees, as we read shortly a while ago. Krishna understands his position. He's actually qualified. So he moves him from that position of stuck to the position of surrender by his transcendental instruction. And then how does that apply to us? Well, we're also stuck. And who knows how many lifetimes we've been stuck. And who's having fun? Are we having fun yet? Or peace? Oh, mention the word peace to Prabhupada and listen to what he'll say. What peace? United Nations, and off he goes. And so the position of peace in the transcendental sense is to be connected, not to desires, because that's going back to the verse that you discussed last week, I guess. Not desires, and desires are arising from contact with the modes of nature. And as the modes of nature are changing, desires are also changing. We think we're changing, it's the modes of nature are changing. And the mind and the whole machine is being moved by that swabhava, what is a long-term development of a particular swabhava. It can change. The material swabhava can change. It does change. And one can be going in this direction. And in course of it, there's a very detailed description in Krishna's teachings to Uddhava, in the Bhagavad Gita, how to change your swabhava. It's very involved, and it's certainly doable. But there has to be a willingness. It has to be a willingness to get from point A to B to do anything. So one can change one's swabhava. But the advocacy of Bhagavad Gita is not just change your swabhava. Don't go from this conditioning to that conditioning to another conditioning, but relieve yourself from all conditioning. And that's this verse 62. That's the position of taking shelter of the personality of Godhead. No, then one can say, well, how do I do that? And that's the Bhagavad Gita is how to do that. The beginning verse of chapter 7 of Bhagavad Gita, reaching way back, Krishna says he's going to explain to Arjuna how to come to that stage of yoga practice, where the mind is fixed on him and all activities are for his service. The mind and the body, and that's the bhakti process. So reading Bhagavad Gita gives us that direction, the how-to direction. And the problem is not so much we don't really know how to. The problem is not we don't know how to. There's lots of how-to questions, I find. But it's not, the problem is people, some secret story is being held back from the how-to people. It's not a how-to problem. It's we're attached to this false ego, thinking ourselves independent, thinking ourselves the doer, thinking with the doer the enjoyer, and the material sense of peace and happiness. And we're stuck to the material paradigm. So the message of Bhagavad Gita helps through knowledge to give light to people who don't even know. What to speak of is their willingness to move. So that's why we like reading Bhagavad Gita and studying Bhagavad Gita, and we like distributing Bhagavad Gita, and even most of all, we like following Bhagavad Gita, right? That's why we're having this nice Bhagavad Gita class every Saturday night from 8 till 9 o'clock. So we can have a nice understanding of how to bring Krishna into the center, because he's there waiting and reminding and prodding and sometimes poking to help us stop being complacent and being attached and come to the position where that this double benefit, peace of the mind and peace of the heart, from loving and being loved. Isn't that a nice expression? The peace that passeth all understanding. It's very nicely detailed in the whole of Bhagavad Gita, and I'm anticipating a really vibrant audience this evening where you're going to keep me engaged in responding to your questions. So I'm going to pause here and invite discussion. I don't know how you want to do that. Narottam, how do you want to do that?
Hare Krishna Maharaj. We'll let the audience ask. They can unmute themselves.
Great.
And if you have any questions, you can go ahead.
Why don't we see the faces? Let's go to the Zoom picture.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj. Hare Krishna Maharaj. I am audible, Maharaj?
Yes, you are.
Come see. Thank you, Maharaj, like giving nice explanation for the peace of mind and the surrender to God. Like I have some, we are trying to get the peace of mind. So, like it's every time we are so anxiety and like we will get quickly angry. So we will get small things, we will get angry. So like our son or like whatever it is, like small things, we will get angry and we will shout. And like, how can we control those anxieties and like those angries?
How to? Well, you become Krishna conscious. Now, tongues to tiksha swabharata. If there's an expectation of finding happiness over there in some object or the configuration of material nature, and it doesn't happen, then you get frustrated. You have an expectation that isn't fulfilled, then there's frustration. And when there's frustration, generally, commonly, frustration is followed very quickly by anger. Now, some people are more stoic and they can just kind of hold it in and they don't display their anger. And some people, they can't hold it in and they display their anger. But the root, from Bhagavad Gita, where anger arises from, anger arises from contact with the mode of passion. Rajo guna sam udbhava kamesha krodesha, kroda, anger, kamesha, krodesha, rajo guna samudbhava, rajo guna. It arises from contact with the mode of passion that brings desire, kama, and when kama is unfulfilled, then krodha. So stay away from that mode of nature. It's a very guaranteed you'll find yourself in angry situations, angry dispositions. What's the option? If you don't go there, where are you going to go? Well, you can go towards the mode of goodness, which means you tolerate and you forgive and you don't hold expectations of happiness in the field of the material energy. Well, you have to have expectations of happiness. So repose that tendency on Krishna. How do you do that? It's the how to. So you cultivate devotion. And then how do you cultivate devotion? You follow the activities of devotion. And you're doing And so as you're doing, then there's purification. And as there's purification, another nice way of describing the same thing from the Bhagavatam is from Canto 1, Chapter 2, where the modes of goodness and passion, the modes of ignorance and passion are diminished simply by absorbing oneself in Bhagavad Dharma or Bhagavad Gita. And by absorbing in Bhagavad Gita means that you do service.
Recording in progress.
You do service for Bhagavan. And as you're doing service for Bhagavan, then you're lifted above the modes. And you'll become stronger, spiritually stronger, ready to withstand that same tendency that you described a little bit earlier, the tendency that says, anger is arising and you get carried away and you say and do things you later regret because anger came. So you diminish the anger by diminishing the root of where anger arises from.
Maharaj, thank you so much.
Okay.
If you have time, I have another question, Maharaj.
I'm ready.
So here, Arjuna, like Krishna says, you don't give up the battle, so you can fight and like you can think of me on the battlefield also. So here, like material world, we are doing like material things, but we are not. I'm not supposed to remember Krishna on the same material things like we can do the job or cooking
You're
or something.
You're not supposed to remember Krishna? What was that? I didn't catch it.
I'm not remember always in the Krishna and
you're
material
not always
things
remembering
also.
Krishna when you're doing material things. Okay.
See, yes. So how can we remember, like always remember Krishna, never forget Krishna? This is very difficult to when we are chanting
it's
also
just a
my mind
how-to
gets
question once again. Practice Krishna consciousness, and that's how to. So yeah, that's not a very satisfying answer, right? So you just engage. If you engage very nicely, by you practice trying to engage nicely in chanting your japa every morning, very carefully, you'll find that you're able to think of Krishna. You'll find that clearing takes place, and you're able to think of Krishna more while you're doing your daily activities. I just want to edit the language of your question a little bit, and that little bit is, if you see trained through the eyes of knowledge, you can start to see even things that are of this world as having their connection with Krishna, and then you're engaging the material energy, external energy, in service to Krishna. I know you like to read. Why don't you read Brahma Samhita, verse 61, verse and purport? And the simple here's the situation. It's related to your question. The situation is that Brahma has just had this super exalted, elevated realization in the form of the Brahma Samhita prayers. I mean, he really understands Govinda, right? And then next, the prayers are over, and now he's got to build the universe. Now, you don't have to build the universe. You have to do your career and whatever those things are you do with your family and the kids and clean the house and that you do stuff. But it's nothing compared to what Brahma had to do. He had to build the universe. The universe is a big place with lots of details. It was like lots of work. So he is concerned, as are you. If I do this work, then I might forget Krishna. And if I just remember Krishna, then I'm not doing my work. I'm not doing that which is my nature, which you want me to do. So what to do? Is how to make this connection between things of this world and things that are not of this world. That's the question. and read it. It's a fantastic verse, fantastic purport, Bhaktisiddhanta, all the way in his very elevated language. He uses this term, gona dharma. All of this is just to respond to, we do our material stuff. Gona dharma means secondary activity, secondary duty. So there's the if you do your primary duty, the hearing and chanting and the 9 processes of bhakti nicely, then you join the gona dharma activities, then you'll become as purified doing the gona dharma as you're doing the primary paradharma, because you're getting purified by doing things that are your nature, but your nature is being elevated by contact with the spiritual energy of devotional service. Just do your 9 processes of activity, 9 processes of devotional service nicely, and then you'll start to see the world differently. It may take a while, but it will happen. It will happen. That's the potency of the 9 processes of bhakti. And then you won't just see it as doing material stuff. You're serving Krishna. You're using your senses and the object of the senses and serving the master of the senses. It's as spiritual as the spiritual world is spiritual. Good luck. So, Brahma Samhita, text 61, verse and purport.
Thank you, Maharaj. Thank you so much.
Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna.
If anybody else has any questions, please unmute yourself and you can ask. I guess everybody on this side, Maharaj, is very scholarly.
I'm intimidating. Snehavali, you've got to have a question. I see your name over there, hiding behind your non-devotee name. We have a question in the room. Should we take the question in the room?
Absolutely, Maharaj.
All right. I'll call on you again, Snehavali. Hurry up and come up with something. We have a portable microphone here. It's okay. It's not even plugged in. All right.
In that verse that you shared, 61, about everlasting peace and sthanam, is the sthanam that is being referred to the spiritual abode?
Yes.
Oh,
And there it is, the supreme and eternal abode.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that. I was not sure what sthanam meant.
Yes, that's what it means.
Okay, thank you.
We have another question in the room. Look at this. We got 2 to your 1. You better get something going over on that end.
Guru Maharaj, could you please explain the meaning of that biblical phrase on peace? I didn't understand it.
This one?
Passeth all understanding, something like that.
The peace is the peace that passeth all. So, the mind has an understanding of peace looks like this. And then there's another kind of peace that passes that understanding. Spiritual peace. And that spiritual peace isn't the material kind. That's what it means. To being when one is connected, it's like another verse in Bhagavad Gita. When one's consciousness is connected with Krishna, one can pass through the most turbulent of situations, and it's like wonderful. And that's not wonderful. That's terrible. There's lots of terrible things going on in the world today, and someone that's connected to Krishna, um, they're dealing with the stuff that's going on that's terrible, but there's an inner contentment that can't be shaken by anything. Even when it shakes, it's not shaken. Okay, we're waiting for our Jersey City group.
2 of 2.
Do we have something over there?
I don't think so, Maharaj.
Okay, we
Seems
got.
like everybody is settled in and they're just enjoying your association.
Oh, okay. We have something else in the room.
I was just curious, based off of Shri Radhika Mataji's question, just wondering, like, is it possible to be, like, feeling what's around you and empathizing with the people around you while also feeling peaceful at the same time? Like, experiencing both emotions at the same time?
I just got distracted by watching the screen jump.
No, I was just
Speak
asking,
slowly.
you spoke to Shri Radhika Mataji's question on how the devotee has an inner peace, even when there's turmoil in the world.
Yes.
So I was wondering, is there a way that devotees still feel and understand what's going on? Like they can feel it
Oh yeah.
completely
Oh yeah.
while still being at peace.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, the becoming Krishna conscious doesn't mean becoming unconscious. But the consciousness doesn't depart from Krishna. So one can, the mind can feel, the senses can feel, but the consciousness remains transcendental. Consciousness remains transcendental. When it's cold out, it's not that the person that's a transcendentalist doesn't feel the cold, but they don't identify with it. They may, whatever they may do. But they tolerate, and they don't let their mind go away from Krishna because that's because of love, because of devotion, and knowing that it's temporary and all things will pass and all of that thing. There's a lull, so I'm going to tell a little story. I just heard a nice little story. There's a story of a young Brahmin boy who was very attached to his deity. And he worshipped his deity with such devotion. And it was just amazing how attached he was. Little boy, and very attached to his deity. And one day, it became very cold outside. And the little boy started exhibiting symptoms of shivering and, intense reaction, looked like intense reaction to the cold. And it's continued and continued. So the parents got a doctor and then another doctor and gave him medicine and nothing worked and nothing worked. And then the little boy had a dream. In his dream, the deity told him, when it got very cold, you forgot to put shawls around my shoulder. So he woke up and immediately went to his altar and placed shawls around his deity, and immediately he felt warm again. Now that's Krishna consciousness. So it's not like if it gets cold, you don't feel cold. If you stub your toe, you don't feel you stub your toe, or something like that. Or, something. Physical pain is physical pain. And someone insults you, but if someone insults a great Vaishnav, you feel something, and you say something, and you do something. So there's transcendental emotion, but it doesn't depart from Krishna. It's always in connection with Krishna, in response to pleasing Krishna. That's the place of happiness and peace, transcendent, beyond, that passeth all understanding. How we doing?
Hey, Maharaj, I have a question for you.
All right.
It says, the translation is, under illusion, you are now declining to act according to my direction, but compelled by the word born of your own nature, you will act all the same.
Yes.
This is Krishna is speaking to the Kshatriya.
Is
Does
what?
this apply? Krishna is speaking to Arjuna, who's a Kshatriya.
Yes, yes, yes.
Does this also apply to Brahmana, Vaishya, and Sudra?
Oh yeah. But the idea is there's a menu, and one, can you get them?
Their videos are off, so that it disappeared now, and I'm trying to bring it back.
Okay, keep trying.
Yes.
We're having a little technical difficulty on this end. Sorry about that. Side conversation. The where the train is going here is Krishna wants Arjuna, and which means he wants us to take shelter of him. And we don't take shelter of him, that's the default mode. We go into this false ego and swabhava, etc., etc., etc. So Krishna doesn't want that for Arjuna or for us. And so we need to know, if we hit this button, what happens? And if we hit that button, what happens? Of course, hitting the Krishna button doesn't mean you're immediately in transcendence and you don't feel, etc., etc. But there's a cultivation of our original Krishna consciousness. But that's where the train is going, to make very clear, these are your options, Arjuna. And you're going to act according to your nature. Even if you don't want to fight, you're going to fight because it's your nature. You're a Kshatriya. So direct your spirit according to my indication. Now, in his case, in Arjuna's case, Krishna is right there, right before him. And he's speaking Bhagavad Gita. And in our case, we don't have Krishna standing before us speaking Bhagavad Gita. But we have Bhagavad Gita. And if we are remembering, if we read properly and carefully, we can remember the Krishna's instructions and follow the indication given from Bhagavad Gita and the training that we received from our teachers, qualified brahmanas that are guiding us in our spiritual lives. And have questions you ask. You'll be taken care of. This still isn't right on the screen.
They haven't turned on their videos, Mark, so
They don't have to turn on their videos. They can just show their names. You can see the full screen of everybody. There you go. Just click that little gallery button. There we go. Thank you. We're training up a technician that's, I'm surprised. He's a teenager. He should know all this stuff. Okay, anyone else?
So, Maharaj, is it possible for us, for you to give us some examples of prescribed duty for Brahmana, Vaishya, Sudra?
Examples of what? Acting
Of
according to
their
Krishna's...
prescribed duty. Work born of their nature.
Well, it's right. It's Brahma karma swabhavajam. So that's the Brahmana. He acts according to the mode. So samaptamakta pakshocham chantir arjavamevacha So, tolerant, simplicity, cleanliness, truthfulness. Those are qualities, and one who is a brahmana, they won't depart from those qualities. Even there's some challenge, they won't depart from those qualities because it's their nature. And so they stay with their nature. They're always truthful. They don't cut corners. They speak something that's truthful, and they keep their word because they're the mode of goodness. And a Vaishya, they Krishi Gorakshavanijam, Vaishya Karma Swabhavajam. Vaishya Karma Swabhavajam. Ja means take birth or arises from the nature of a Vaishya. So they like doing business. Vanik or Vanija, they like doing business. They see something and they like doing business. We're just reading together, I'll build you a temple, and Prabhupada was speaking really strongly about, tell me one, I think he was speaking to Ambarish, tell me anybody that you know that starts with 14 rupees, and within a period of a few years, they have something crore, 40 crore, or whatever the number was. 40 crores. So I don't even know what a crore is, but it's a lot. And it's just so that's transcendental. Transcendental. I'll say it a third time. It's transcendental risk taking to take something and turn it into many. It's transcendental. What does that mean? Transcendental something. We are not interested in the Vaishya activity. We're interested in Krishna conscious activity. And so the Krishna conscious activity means we have something and we use that something in Krishna's service. And we want to see that something used in Krishna's service be accepted by Krishna. And when that happens, good chance that will grow because it's being used in Krishna's service. And when Krishna sees that one can handle nicely the resources that are provided by him to you or to others, then he'll supply more and supply more and supply more. And thus, it's a transcendental entrepreneurship. There's a devotee I know who is planning during his lifetime, Prabhupada disciple, Prabhupada the transcendental entrepreneur. Entrepreneur in the sense that entrepreneurs take risks. And Prabhupada took risks, big time. But he, very, very bold, very, very bold, and very expansive and empowered by Krishna. And he was able to convey that empowerment that he had in Krishna to others to do amazing things that they would otherwise never do. I heard this nice story. Maybe some of you may know the history better than I do about the Toronto Temple. Some years ago, when they found this a church, big stone church, etc., they hardly had any money. But they thought, wow, it's a great location, a great building. It needed a lot of work, etc., and they didn't have any money. And Prabhupada told them to do it. And Krishna will help you. Now, there are other times when Prabhupada was very cautious about, don't do if, etc., etc. That's, anyway, without going through the ISKCON history. Prabhupada was able to convince them, and they went forward and, being inspired by Prabhupada's enthusiasm and instruction, they did transcendental entrepreneurship. And they, bought the temple and developed the temple, and it's still there. It's a very nice temple, very nice very wonderful deity worship, a nice strong congregation in a really cold place. I don't know what it's like over there in New Jersey, but I'm sure it's colder in Toronto. But it's a very nice temple. So, and Shudra, just being in service to others. Just being in service to, being happy to be in service to others. We're just reading in this book, I'll Build You a Temple, and Prabhupada was really insisting when he walked around the property and saw the devotees weren't fully engaged, he insisted if they can't do brahminical work, then they can work in the garden. But they have to be engaged. So whatever one's nature is, it can be something very, very simple that doesn't require great skill, but you do that something with devotion for Krishna and put your heart into it in service to Krishna. And because all different divisions of labor are needed in a social organization. That's the proper organization of society. We've got a question in the room. Go ahead.
When Lord Krishna is speaking about the Varnas that you just were speaking, it seemed that there was a point in time where the Varnas were very distinct. In the modern context, to say a person has a very clear type of Varna seems difficult.
It's rare.
And so when we're talking about Swabhava, it takes many years to even understand what one's Swabhava is. So what are some indicators or guideposts by which one can understand their own Swabhava or nature?
When you have spare time, that's what do you do with it? Or, when there's an attack, who runs and who stands and fights? Like we were just reading, Mr. Seti. When we were reading, he's Kshatriya. So, when there's leisure time and when there's difficulty, those two ends of the spectrum. And what is kind of like, what is your son attracted to? You see what he's attracted to, and that tells something about his nature. Naturally. I mean, and there's ways to, nurture nature towards something. But, so much depends upon, swabhava as well as association, the modes of nature with which one has association. And so swabhava can change, or nature can change. Some persons really, like studying. Young people like studying. Some people, it's like, anyway. Just observe. If they're generous in giving, or if they're greedy, and anyway, just see tendencies. And then they can be cultivated. You have something? We have another in-room question. We're running out of time too. We have 3 minutes.
Okay. It's really quick, but I was just, as you were saying that, I was thinking sometimes someone may be good at something, but they may not like to do it, versus like they really like something. So like what would that mean? Is that your nature, or is that something like you might be really good at it, but...
I can think of examples of people who are really bad at something. They really like it. I can't think. You're a school teacher. Do you know some examples that you're thinking of like this?
Of like someone who likes it, or
No, the other one.
who doesn't like.
They really do
They're
something
really good
nicely
at
and
something.
they don't like it.
but they don't like it. I mean, like sometimes you're good at something, like
But can you think of examples?
like sometimes like you can be really good at being like a temple president or something, or like doing things like doing something, organizing, or like I mean I'm not saying that. I'm just that's a good example. Or like organizing a group of people. But
Okay. I'm sorry I asked the question.
I can also say like someone is really good at like writing but doesn't like it, or someone is really good at reading.
People I know that are good at writing, they like writing.
Yeah.
I mean,
Hare Krishna Maharaj, like this is for the good example. Like today, my son is a good at kirtan, but he don't like to do kirtan.
He's great at kirtan, but he doesn't like it.
Yeah, he good at kirtan. Like when like he is doing a kirtan class, like Mataji told, like when the tune he get like 1 or 2 times, then he will get that tune, new tune also.
Well,
So, but he don't want to join the kirtan, and he don't want to do the kirtan. That is
his
example.
reservation may have something to do with shyness, not wanting to be, in the limelight, and something. There may be something else behind it besides, he doesn't like singing. So I can't think of too many examples. You gave one, and there may be something behind the reservation that's not just he doesn't like it. There's maybe some other reason. Generally, things that people like, they put their heart into it, and I know some people that sing really loud, and they always sit right up by the microphone, and it's always off key. And they really like it. Now, I'm sure it's not anybody that's on this call right now. It's like that, but okay, we've hit our time. Our time is up. So, Narottam, what to do? You want to tell everybody to go take prasadam, or what do you want to do?
Yes, Maharaj. Thank you very much for making time with your audience as well to sit with us for an hour. Yeah. For those who do not know Maharaj, I think there's 1 or 2 devotees here who are new to you, have never seen you before. Shankarshan will give a little summary about you. Shankarshan?
Yes, Prabhu. Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. His Holiness Rompada Swami Maharaj is a disciple of ISKCON founder Acharya, Srila Prabhupada. He was first introduced to this movement of Krishna consciousness when he was a college student. He has accepted, sort of life sannyasa and preaches the message of true devotion by traveling all over United States, Canada, Caribbean, India, China, and many parts of the world. With his most kind and loving persona, he inspires his followers to take the process of devotional service. His Holiness Rompada Swami very strongly believes in educating everyone in the process of devotional service. He frequently makes presentations and delivers seminar lectures across the world in many famous education institutions such as Massachusetts Institute of Technology, Stanford University, Harvard University, University of Illinois.
You're reading a text, I can tell.
And also, Maharaj,
I've heard it before, many times.
It also gives Maharaj lectures at different corporate offices, Microsoft, Lucent Technologies, and many more. So we are fortunate to have Guru Maharaj before our presence, and trying to, we are very, very fortunate, not just fortunate, very, very fortunate to have Guru Maharaj on this call. And we want Guru Maharaj to come more on this call and try to enlighten us more.
Well, I think I'm going to try to come next week. How about that? Haribol!
Haribol! Could you please all chant Haribol 3 times for Guru Maharaj? Hari Bol. Hari Bol. Holiness